Welcome to Decades of Horror, the 1970s.
Nothing is too vile. Nothing is too dreadful, too awful. You need to know the terror, the horror of Lorrimer. You need to feel the thrill of disgust, the beauty of obscenity.
This is episode 188, recorded April 28th, 2023.
Gruesome Magazine.
Hello once again. I am your host, Doc Rotten, and this podcast about horror films released between 1970 and 1979. Each episode, my co-host Jeff Mohr, Bill Mulligan, Chad Hunt, and I will take a look at another classic, or not. I'm just reading anything I want. Another classic or not so classic film from this wondrous, groovy, gory, and influential decade. All right. Before I get to introduce my crew, let me talk about this. Decades of Horror, Gruesome Magazine have partnered with Play Now Media on several of their channels. The 70s and 80s are Wicked Horror TV, Free Horror Movies channel. Each of these channels now include episodes of Decades of Horror 1970s and 1980s. This channel is available on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon, Fire TV, Android TV, online websites across all OTT platforms, as well as mobile, tablet, and desktop. It's exciting. Decades of Horror, the classic era, has been available for what, about a year and a half now, maybe two?
Yes, it's episode 91.
Yeah.
So
now the 70s, 80s are joining in, so you can catch them live on the tube. It's just not live.
Trying to keep up on the new ones and then gradually working backwards on the old ones till we get through the video ones.
All right, so let me introduce the crew, starting off with my co-host, Jeff Mohr. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, and I want you to know I ride this train twice a week, regularly. I'll tell you where that comes from later.
Sounds
I
like
screwed it up.
Sounds like
I ride this train regularly,
somewhere.
twice a week.
Oh, me. All right, also joining us this week is Bill Mulligan, writer, director, special guru, and yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I was too busy reading Rom, now available at Amazon.com. Check out who wrote it down there. Yeah, oops, there we go. There.
Get a little closer there. Let's see it. Push it closer. Yeah, zip in. Yeah. It says Bill Mulligan. Who is this Bill Mulligan guy?
And they spelled it right. Yes, R-A-U-M.
There's another guy named Bill Mulligan, huh?
What?
Hey,
not for long.
I got my copy on Kindle, although it'll kind of be hard to get you to sign.
Hard to sign.
Have to get another copy to get you to
sign the Kindle.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll figure something out. It's a digital age. All right, we are here to review the Satanic Rites of Dracula. This is the final Dracula with Christopher Lee in the role. He was up for another one. We'll get to that in a little bit. He didn't. He bailed. But this is it. Peter Cushing is returning as well. So, and I love Hammer, so that's what I picked. And we're excited to do this. Well, at least I am. We'll see about the rest of us. Oh man, Chad unfortunately could not join us tonight, and we're thinking of you, bud. We hope everything turns out okay. Chad's had a rough week, and we are feeling for him and thinking positive thoughts and positive waves.
Yeah.
To quote Mr. Sutherland. Anybody know what that movie's
Chad
from?
Is healthy, just some family stuff.
Chad's healthy. He's fine, but it's just a week from hell. But we love you, buddy. We love you.
We do.
All right. There's a lot to get into with this. I don't even know where to start because I love Hammer films and I love Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and all the bunch. So this is going to be great. But before we get into our discussion, I think I should jump to the card and then we'll find out when we first saw this and what our first impressions were. So there it is. The Satanic Rites of Dracula, directed by Alan Gibson, written by Don Houghton. I'm going to go with that. The cast includes Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Michael Coates, William Franklin, Richard Vernon. Coles, what did I say?
Coates.
Well, I might have. Joanna Lumley, Valerie Van Oost, Barbara Youngley, and Freddie Jones. And of course, it's a Hammer film released in, it looks like West Germany in November 3rd, 1973. January 13th, 1974 in the UK. October 11th, 1978 in the US.
Whoa.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, there's a lot to say there. The box office was for 547,000 and then 494 theater admissions in France and Spain. So we'll go with
for
that.
some reason they'll show theater admissions for some European countries, which
tickets must be cheap.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. And that's possibly the most exciting picture from the show. No, it's not, but we'll go with it. Synopsis: in the 1970s, Scotland Yard believes it has uncovered a case of vampirism. So they call in a veteran vampire researcher, Professor Lorrimer Van Helsing. Where have we seen Lorrimer Van Helsing before? Well, Lorrimer is from Dracula,
AD 72.
1972,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
So this is a sequel to that 2 years after. It's set 2 years after, right?
Right.
Do I have that right?
Yes.
And continues that. And we have his daughter, but don't we have his granddaughter again? But she's played by somebody else?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Right. Yep. So all that and more. We'll get into all that goodness here in just a bit. Let's find out when we first saw this and what our first impressions were. Bill Mulligan, since you are in the right corner or the correct corner, because you're in the left corner. But why don't you let us know when you first saw this, what your first impression was, and how's it hold up today?
Well, I first saw some of it at a Famous Monsters convention, and I don't remember if it was 76 or 77. And the Hammer people were there. They were trying to get Vampirilla off the ground. And they showed that Peter Cushing was there, the Barbara Lee, who was going to play Vampirilla. And they showed this, and we all knew about it, but we hadn't seen it because it just hadn't gotten released. And I'll just tell you, when the film opens up with some nudity, the mostly 13-year-old young male crowd there, yeah, they lost their shit. And then Barbara Lee comes out in a cape and tosses it back, and she's wearing a Vampirilla outfit, and what little minds they had left were completely gone at that time.
melted right where they were.
Yeah. But I didn't get to see the whole film. I was kind of bouncing in and out, going to panels and stuff. And so it was a while. I guess I finally rented it on VCR or something and watched it. And so here, I prefer AD 72. And I didn't think I did, but now having watched AD 72 again, I just find it better. For one thing, the jazz soundtrack on this one always kind of bothered me, and it just felt like you could see the budget dropping with every film. Things had really gotten pretty low budget. This looks like a really good made-for-TV movie in a lot of ways. Not what I associate with Hammer. Yeah, I mean Hammer. I always associate Hammer with the high English production values and all, and they just weren't able to do that at this point. Captain Kronos, same problem for me. I just feel like, boy, if these movies had been made 10 years earlier, we'd be thinking about them in a very different way. But it's got Peter Cushing, it's got Christopher Lee. There's actually an interesting plot there. The idea of Dracula as a rich Howard Hughes type, which he would be, because compound interest is an amazing thing, and he's been collecting those coins for a long time, parking them in a bank somewhere. Yeah, he's going to be one of the richest guys on the planet. Hilarious. And then you start getting into the science fiction element, the making a plague. Dracula wants to die, but then he wants to take out the whole world with him. And at first I thought that's kind of dopey, but I'm like, no, he's a dick. Yeah, I could see that. If he's decided he's tired of immortality, he's not going to just go off on this mortal coil or something, just let Van Helsing stake him. He's going to take everyone out. But I think the thing that I'll always love this film for is introducing me to the idea of a vampire being killed by a hawthorn bush.
A hawthorn bush.
Because I ended up using that in a short film that I wrote, and I've always loved it. And it just really drives home the point to me that there are so many ways to kill a vampire. Dracula doesn't even know about it. He's just wandering there. He's trying to chase down Van Helsing, and Van Helsing's like, oh man, what can I kill him with that's around here? And there's like a dozen things. I take my pick. I could pick up this stick. I could, stab him on this fence. Oh, a hawthorn bush. And Dracula's stuck in this, and he's like, Christ, does this kill me too?
literally, yeah.
What doesn't kill me? Yeah. So yeah, I gotta love that. And
well, I get they do mention it because it's because it's,
they mention it.
Yeah.
It's and if you've watched enough movies, if they mention some weird exotic way to kill a vampire, that will come up in the third act.
It has to.
Don't you worry. But I think Doc and I were talking about this before we started, that there was, I'm sure all of us bought every horror book there was, every book about horror movies. They had a guaranteed sale in Saugerties, New York. And there was one I have, and I don't remember the name, but it was an oversized book, and the back cover in beautiful garish red is poor Christopher Lee getting poked by what was apparently an actual hawthorn bush, because the fake one didn't come in time. So that kind of got in my mind. And so I was looking forward to seeing it. I don't think it's one of the better Draculas. And it's no. And it's not the last one. I do prefer Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, as silly as it is. But it's always good to see Lee and Cushing together, the yin and the yang. I know Lee was a lot less happy to be in these movies than Cushing probably was, but then he had a lot less to do. At least in this one, he did get some dialogue.
I was going to say, dialogue was here for him. And
he even got to use kind of a funny voice, which, So, I think maybe but he did go in here with a bad attitude, because I've always read that the original title was going to be something dreadful, like Dracula is dead and living in Chelsea or something. It's something stupid thing that they came up with. That was a play on another film, and Lee hated it. He hated that, when they didn't take Dracula seriously. So I'm sure he was just making this under protest. And he always said that he kept doing these Dracula movies because they would come to him and say, look, if you don't come and make this movie, all these guys are going to be out of work and blah. And they kind of, goaded him into doing it. I don't know how much of that is true, but he definitely, and then he had to put on those god-awful contact lenses.
3 different ones for this one.
Yeah. So who can really blame him? He's got ugly contacts in his eyes. He's being poked by an actual hawthorn bush, but at least he got to make movies with his friends. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a good way to look at it. At least he was hanging out with Peter.
Yeah.
Cushing. All right, Jeff, when did you first see Satanic Rites of Dracula, and what did you think of it, and how does it hold up today?
I just saw this a few days ago.
For the first time?
Yes.
Oh, my.
As I've told the story many times before about my lack of exposure to Hammer films as I was growing up, I'm blaming it on Iowa, but at any rate, I can't think of any. The stuff that I saw when I was growing up, I saw the Quatermass movies. I saw the science fiction stuff, but I never saw any of the horror-related ones. So I don't know if they didn't have them purchased for their package on TV or whatever. But at any rate, whether it was my own lack of attention or it wasn't there, I didn't see it till now. And it's interesting when you're researching this, it tells a story right away when you see, like, a lot of places it's listed as a 1974 movie, but it came out in West Germany in November 1973. So IMDb gives it the 1973 stamp, not in the UK till 74. Over 4.5 years later before it hits the US. And you're kind of going, what's the deal with that? I didn't put the AKAs on there on the card, Doc, but I wanted to.
Oh, please let us know. Yes.
The German one was Dracula braucht frisches Blut. Dracula needs fresh blood. And then the one that Bill's talking about is Dracula is dead and well and living in London.
Stupid. ...
Dracula's dead. ... That was the working title. And then when it finally got re-released in the U.S., it was Count Dracula and his Vampire Bride.
Yep.
Anyway, so that tells you something right off the bat. And so anyway, though, I enjoyed this, and I need to watch AD 1972 again, because the whole hip mod, pseudo hip mod music and parties and stuff, that stuff just in lingo just turned me off to no end.
Mm-hmm.
Love the opening scene in 72, but this one I liked because they don't try to do that. They get rid of all that. They're playing it fairly straight. His granddaughter's played by somebody else. Was it Joanna Lumley? And she does a fine job. And of course, Cushing and Lee are excellent. The supporting cast is pretty good. We have one repeat from 1972, right?
Mm-hmm.
Besides Cushing and Lee. So anyway, I enjoyed it. And, you know, when you listen to it, the opening theme, it kind of feels like James Bond opening theme.
Yeah.
Kind of half and half. And then it kind of turns into, there's some James Bondian stuff in there, you know, like a guy with a tape recorder in his wristwatch. I loved it. Anyway, yeah, and these guys in this gang of guys in there, I was calling them the sheepskin vest gang.
Yeah.
But
they're so weird.
Or maybe the Afghan vest gang. I don't know.
That is the least threatening uniform for henchmen that you could possibly come up with.
Well, they were wearing black underneath their vest. Anyway.
They do die wonderfully well, though.
They do. They ride motorcycles. We have lots of cool looking sniper guns with silencer on. But anyway, I kind of enjoyed that. And this whole, really, it's worth it to me to watch the one scene of Freddie Jones explaining everything to Cushing, to Van Helsing. He is awesome. God, you just look and go, this guy is crazy evil. So anyway, he's over the edge. He's gone. Lots of ways to kill him. And they do. He lists them off, and they use every one of them. They use every single one of them. Except for garlic, I guess. We have the cross, we have silver we have
running
water.
Yeah.
And the hawthorn bush or tree. Because that was used as the crown of thorns for Jesus.
Yeah.
Yes. The running water one bugs me though, because I think the premise is that it's one thing when they tossed him into like a river, I get that he drowns. Okay, but now it's like a squirt gun. I mean, he just sets off the fire sprinklers.
He sets off it. Yeah, they turn on the sprinklers, and these four. I think there's four of them.
Yeah, they all just kind of wicked witch with the west. East go down.
They all get all wet, and they're writhing around, screaming on the ground with water pouring on them. And in the trailer, when that happens, it flashes in big block letters: "Orgy of horror!" exclamation point. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but there was no orgy there.
No orgy here.
Particularly, they're not dissolving. There's nothing. Anyway, but there are a couple of just super huge plot points, and Bill mentioned one of them, which is Dracula's going to kill off the entire world with this plague, in which case he won't have any food. But I guess that's what he wants. I can't remember what the other one was, but he's a dirty double crosser.
Oh yeah.
He promises these guys all kinds of stuff, and then they suddenly realize they're going to be the first ones to die.
Yeah.
All right. I'm done. I'm sorry, Doc.
Oh man. So I have an interesting story with this one. I eventually didn't get to see it for the first time until I think late 90s, early aughts. AMC had this really wonderful Halloween stretch of films, and they played all these Hammer films, including all the later Dracula films, which I hadn't seen, even except for Scars. I think Scars was the only one they didn't have on there, but they had finally got to see Dracula AD and got to see this one. Now, since then, this movie is in public domain, so you can see it just about anywhere. I don't know how that happens, but hey, there it is. Probably because of the same reason it ended up in the States as Count Dracula and his Vampire Bride. But the story goes back to the 70s when it did land in the States. It was playing at a local theater as Count Dracula's Vampire Bride, and I wanted to see it. I had no idea it was actually Satanic Rites of Dracula. I just knew it was a Dracula movie. There was Vampire Brides, and it was playing, and I wanted to go see it. It was rated R, and so that meant I had to talk my dad into taking me, but he refused. And the reason why he refused is because I had previously convinced him to take me to see The Incredible Melting Man. And I did not like that movie when I saw it first. And I actually said, I don't want to see the rest of this movie. And I made him leave. And he got so mad at me that we paid for tickets. Yeah. And then halfway through the movie, we left, that he refused to take me to another movie for about a year and a half. Yeah. I think the next movie he finally took me to was Alien in '79. Was finally he took me to an R-rated movie. But so I missed out. I didn't get to see it, and I didn't get to see another one, which was what was it? The Seven Brothers and One Sister versus Dracula or something like that. Which we'll talk about that here in a little bit. That's if you guys know, but yeah, so that's my fun story about it. I could have seen it in '78 in the theater, and The Incredible Melting Man, my decision there screwed me over. So oh well, but I did finally get to see it, and I just love these films. I know they're bad, and they're not really well made. Like you said, the quality is low. They might not make as much sense as Jeff is giving them credit for, but they I don't know. It's just I do like 72 better, but I actually like the supporting cast a lot better. This supporting cast is basically a couple of cops, and they're just not really all that engaging. Although they do get to end up in the vampire basement from hell, but that's fun. That's fun stuff. We'll talk about that. So because of the supporting cast in the first one, I really enjoy that much more. There's a lot more gnarly bloodness. This one has basically has people on a table and they're getting ready to stab them, and it's just like this little puddle of blood on her belly button. It's like, I don't know. Carolyn Monroe was covered in it. What happened? That's right. But in the end, I still love these movies, and watching it again, I was kind of like, oh man, because I've seen it a couple times since then, and I was like, oh, am I going to actually be able to sit through this again? And I absolutely did. I turned it on, and I was just like, oh, this is great, and was just sucked in. I have a soft spot for the Hammer films, especially the 70 ones. Now I love them all, but the 70s ones, there's something special about them because they're reaching so hard to make something successful. Maybe not with this one as much as they had in others, but they're really exploring other areas. But the problem is they didn't take the production values with them, so it didn't really end up. And of course, we were talking about this beforehand. The entire horror community or horror genre was changing at that time. The Gothic films were blasé, and The Exorcist had come in, and maybe even Rosemary's Baby before that, and things were getting moving. Dracula wasn't, vampires, Dracula's, Frankenstein monsters weren't it. They were getting to be a little bit thought of as campy and silly, and they weren't as frightening and scary anymore. Now there was a renaissance with Dracula because of the play, and that's why this film finally made it out, made it back out in the in '78, because we got Dracula and Nosferatu and all these other ones. So they, hey, let's get this out. They were all those came out in '79, but they okay, it's time. And was 79 or 78? Those were 78, right? And but anyway, where am I going with this? I watched it again over the past weekend, and I had a great time with it. I love these films. what can I say?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this. Like I said, I saw it. I almost saw it as Count Dracula's Vampire Bride, and I love that title. The Satanic Rites of Dracula is also a great title.
Right.
Don't be. Yeah, it's a fun title. But what do we want to get into? Like, do we want to do tag? I know we can't do taglines with Chad, but
no,
we can do some taglines.
Taglines with Bill.
Taglines with Bill.
Taglines with Chad, as played by Bill Mulligan,
as interpreted
of Wrong.
I only get one of those. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Taglines. We've got six taglines.
We can play some background music here. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. Here are the taglines. First one: the king of the undead marries the queen of the zombies.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what movie they're talking about, but it is not the Satanic Rites of Dracula. No actual queen of zombies will appear in this film. Second one.
Zombies.
Yeah, or any zombies. Yeah. Vampire and vampire hunter meet in one final bloody conflict.
That works.
I mean, that's sort of true. We don't have Christopher Lee versus Peter Cushing anymore after this one. The Masters of Menace, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. See, that would get me to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
They're dead, but they're alive. Those zombies we were speaking of. This one, there is no hope left. That's probably what the folks at Hammer were thinking when they said it.
That was probably to play off of, well, they didn't even call it that then, but Star Wars: A New Hope.
Yeah.
There's no hope left.
And I kind of like this one. Evil begets evil on the Sabbath of the undead. All right. That one's okay. All right. Not a bunch of winners.
This was. I didn't realize that there was November 23rd was some special date. That was the date they were doing their big ceremony.
Yeah.
Is that a big deal in England?
That he had to have the I don't know. He had to have the plague bacillus ready for the 23rd, and somewhere I saw a reference to November 11th. Or the 11th month, I'm sorry. 2311.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think those weird titles are why Christopher Lee wasn't too excited about this.
Yeah.
He was.
You think that's what it was?
Well, he was contractually obliged, and I didn't realize. They also said that Peter Cushing, and you guys probably already know this stuff, but I was reading this in Little Shop of Horrors, issue number 22 on these two movies. That Peter Cushing frequently rewrote his parts to make them, I don't think he changed the meaning, but made them flow better for him or something. But they were pretty sure he did quite a bit on this one.
That doesn't entirely surprise me, because a lot of times it does feel like his dialogue is better than other people's dialogue. I just figured it was because he's a better actor, but it may also be he fixed it up a bit. I know Lee hated a lot of the stuff that he was given, where he hated the dialogue that Dracula was given so much that, he would say, just keep him silent. And some of the movies, he basically doesn't say a word. He hisses a lot.
He doesn't say much in this one, except for that one meeting with Cushing.
Right. Except for that one meeting where he's, playing a character, and he enjoyed that he wasn't playing the usual "I am evil incarnate" kind of stuff. I think that's why he enjoyed Jess Franco's Dracula, because he actually got to do lines from the book and
right. Well, that's the idea I got, that he was a huge fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that Hammer had gotten so far away from that it was not his thing. And
he also didn't like the advertising and the titles. And I know I'm with him on this. Dracula AD 72 had some of the worst posters ever made, where it's just like a close-up of a woman with two Band-Aids on her neck. And it's just like, stupid. It's just stupid, campy. And the movies themselves are not that campy, but the advertising left the impression that you're going to see like Batman stuff. Yeah, that wasn't his thing at all.
Batman meaning the TV show Batman.
The TV show Batman, yeah.
Adam West Batman. Yep.
There we go.
Yep. Now that's the poster. The top poster is the poster I saw when I wanted to go see it. They used that.
Yeah, which to me it doesn't really look, to me it doesn't look like Christopher Lee. It looks like David Niven.
Oh yeah, it doesn't look like, yeah, exactly. Right. And then the bottom one, that's one of the, is that close to that famous picture you saw on the back of the cover?
Yeah, similar. He's got it, except he's wearing a pentagram.
And that's where those taglines are. So and that poster makes it look like they're just all having a good time laughing.
Yeah,
kind of. You know,
it looks like Dracula's stabbing a girl in the chest with a cross, which is very confusing.
And the one on a big stake.
Yeah, and the one on the bottom, I just on principle, I don't think you should give away the flippin' ending of your movie in the poster. Just show a little self-control here.
It's not the first or last time somebody's done that.
No. And hey,
I do remember the bottom one. The bottom one is the UK one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, things were just getting kind of cheap. The bottom one reminds me a lot of, I kind of collect some of the pre-production. Hammer would like hire a very good artist to do promotional art for movies they were trying to sell, to raise money for. And that's what that looks like. Like at this point there. And then by the time we get to Captain Kronos, it looks like they are literally using Photoshop version doesn't exist. It just looks like they cut scenes out of cardboard and pasted them. It's so cheap looking, and it's heartbreaking because they used to have just the best posters and everything.
That middle one, that's the orgy of horror.
Yeah, the orgy of horror. Well,
yeah. That looks. Yeah. They managed to make that look kind of horrifying, but you don't really see that in them.
No.
It's not.
Well, the other thing is when it happens in the movie, they kind of do that cheap solarization effect that I don't know. Just
Oh, the posters. Oh well. I mean, that was part of the decline too. We are literally in the the last stages of.
We're circling the drain.
I think there's less than a half a dozen or so films to come out.
Yeah, they didn't put another one out for like 3 years, right?
Yeah, and
well, no, the next one would be Legend of Seven Golden Vampires. That came out the following year or so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a couple other ones, and then
there's Lady Vanishes and To the Devil a Daughter. And at this point, every movie that they put out had to be a hit to get to the next one, and the last few were not hits.
And To the Devil a Daughter. We're going to have to do that one some point.
At some point, and that is the film that basically killed Hammer.
Yeah.
And they were going to. I mean, Kronos was supposed to be a
ongoing series.
That was going to be a ongoing series and probably a TV series and all kinds of other stuff. And then boom.
Yeah. Yep. I remember when that one came out, there was no promotion for it. I saw an ad for it in the newspaper. I'm like, okay, I think I've heard of this. And then it was gone the next week. They were dumping these things. And that meanwhile, they're also trying to raise money for some bigger production value ones like Nessie and Vampirilla. And no, there was no chance. They couldn't even scrape up enough money to make another Kronos.
No.
So it's sad.
One about some kind of blimp or something.
Zeppelins versus pterodactyls, the greatest title ever.
Yes.
So for anyone out there who can make it at Dragon Con this year, I'm going to be presenting a panel on unmade Hammer movies, which is just going to be 60 minutes of, why why Peter Cushing doing I Am Legend. It would have been great. There's so many cool things at various times that for whatever reason didn't get made, but toward the end they were desperately trying to find that secret thing that would work, and they just ran out of time, ran out of money, and it's unfortunate.
Well, the I Am Legend thing, that was back like in 1960.
That was one. That would have been like that would have been one of the early ones, and the censors just said nope.
See, I don't know that much about the history of Hammer, but it was really interesting to me in reading about this, how it was switching hands, and I'm he was very Michael Carreras was very complimentary about his father, but at the same time was like he had gotten a point in his life that I was supposed to be running the studio, and he just took the money to support his lifestyle. He didn't really care about making movies anymore. And at some point he decided he was going to sell it and didn't tell Michael. And in the meantime had been given away rights. Like he found out he wasn't getting anything off any Hammer movies in the US. I don't know about in the UK, but you buy the studio from your dad and then find out there's nothing there. There's no royalties. There's no. So anyway, I found that all to be very interesting, and they had to tighten the belt past the point of being able to look like they did, and a lot of the long-term guys grew old too and left. Like Bernard Robinson or Bernard Robinson, I guess.
Terrence Fisher,
Terrence Fisher.
When you think about Hammer, when you look at Hammer, really started in 1958 and was largely done by very early in the 1970s. It did not have a long life, but it flared out brilliantly. But it didn't last as long as I thought it did.
Right.
When you actually crunch the numbers.
In context, in the mid 70s, when you think that cinema started at the turn of the century, right? It's kind of did. It still had 20 years of, or 10, 15 years, I guess, of it.
Right. And again, the other thing is Hammer actually has been around for a long time.
Right.
What we Americans think of as Hammer films is actually a fairly small percentage of the films they did. They did a lot of wacky British comedies. But the thing about wacky British comedies, unless you're British, they're not that wacky. They're just, you just sort of stare. I don't get it, and they weren't meant for us. They weren't meant for you. So that's
unless they're Benny Hill or Terry Thomas, right?
Yeah, well, Benny Hill. Some things are universal. Slapping a bald guy on the head, and that's just funny, no matter who you are.
Well, I thought it was weird.
Sorry, Jeff.
No, you brought it up about him being this huge real estate multimillionaire or something. He owned the most land in London after the government and I forget who else they said.
The church,
the government, and anyway,
Well,
anyway, it's weird because that big headquarters building was supposed to have been built on the site of the church from 1972.
Oh, you're talking about in the movie. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about the movie.
I thought you were still talking about Carreras. I was like, I didn't hear about that.
No. I'm sorry. My brain. It's gone.
It's like, what?
That's one thing. The only 2 years have passed. We didn't get to see. Usually, we get to see how Dracula comes back.
Yep, we're not here.
And I have to chalk it up to Peter Cushing was obviously not very careful. I mean, he staked him in AD 72. He should have gathered up the ashes and made damn sure none of those henchmen or whatever showed up to, bring him back. But I don't know.
He says, well, I need work in a couple of years, so I'll let him have it. Well, the director for this is Alan Gibson. And if you think that Satanic Rites of Dracula and Dracula AD feel very similar, they're directed by the same person. They were almost made, back to back, right?
Yeah.
Even though they feel like, they're supposed to be spaced by 2 years. And I believe is the writer the same as well? Yes, the writer is same as well with Don Houghton. And he also would follow this up, the writer, with Legend of Seven Golden Vampires. But we'll get to that. So Alan Gibson, I don't know. What do you think of his style of direction here?
I think it's hard to judge because, again, I don't think he was working with a lot of resources. This feels to me, it just reminds me of like the new Avengers that they had. There's the classic Avengers from the 60s, which is just Diana Rigg.
The TV show, not Marvel.
The TV show, not Marvel. Yeah. And then they brought it back and it was fine, but it definitely, that you're off a step. There's just, it just has that kind of rushed feel. Mm-hmm. Whereas even some of the so-called lesser Hammer films, like the Gorgon and everything, just look scrumptious and all. But the budgets were being cut. And frankly, from a business standpoint, that makes sense. If they had spent twice as much money on this movie, it would have been a better movie. I don't think it would have made a dime more at the box office.
Yep.
The time had passed. It
Yep.
just wasn't going to work anymore.
They weren't able to shift the audiences.
Yeah.
Now the director was a TV director.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned TV. That's what he started out in, and I was reading that he went through this BBC director school, sort of. They had like a thing you could apply for in like the early 60s, and then he started off with a bunch of TV stuff, but he also did a movie called Crescendo, which is a Hammer film.
Yep.
Almost every actor that had worked to him that they talked to really liked the guy and liked his style and the way he directed and his care. So I don't know. He ended up doing see, I'm going to lose it now. He did like 10 episodes of Tales of the Unexpected, the series with the Roald Dahl stories. I don't know why I've totally lost it. Here it is. Yeah, 10 episodes of that. He did a few episodes of House of Hammer. So,
I'm sure he got it done on budget and on time, which is
right.
Yeah. Now, some directors, like the great Terence Fisher, are able to put that personal stamp on things, even when the budgets are low. There's something about, and I don't know what it is. It's often so hard to really, so much of what we give directors credit for is actually the cinematographer. Yeah, but some directors and cinematographers just seem to really mesh well, and there's a look that neither one, when they're working on their own separate from each other, is able to achieve what both of them do coming together. But I think it moves. You're not bored watching this film, and right. The fact that it's what, a half an hour before Dracula really shows up. That's kind of a bold thing.
The first time you see him, he's in a picture, and not in the picture actually, because you can't take a picture of Dracula.
Okay, I got a question for you that I think I know the answer to, that I didn't know until I read this stuff. So the first time I'm watching this, I'm like, why is Christopher Lee talking with such a honked up accent in that meeting with Peter Cushing? And they said, well, originally the way it's shot, there's a lamp, like a spot almost on Peter Cushing, and you can't see who's behind it. So he said he talked with that accent so people wouldn't immediately know who he was.
Right.
But as soon as he gets burnt by the Bible, he goes back to normal.
Yeah.
And it's not like his silhouette looks just like him, but that's all right.
Right. It isn't like you didn't know that's who it was immediately.
Right. Who could it be?
Now the writer, like we said, also wrote Legend of Seven Golden Vampires, which Christopher Lee, they wanted him to play Dracula in there, and even for just a little bit, right? Because it would eventually become he would morph into, well, you got to.
He should have said yes to that one. He always says no to the better films, like, I'm not going to be in Brides of Dracula. It's like, Chris, that was one of the best Dracula movies made.
It might be because he wasn't in it. I hate to say that, but because they had to go reach so hard and they put so much on Peter Cushing's shoulders that movie is so much better. But the Dracula that they end up getting is kind of what you feel like the Dracula that they wrote all along, that Christopher Lee would never be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I always get, is that was the Dracula they wanted, and Christopher Lee would always bring the right one, and then the poor schlub that had to do it. But I love that movie. Is just special in its own way because of the way it's made. But
I got a feeling when they sent the script to Christopher Lee, he just thumbed through the pages and gets to the part where, and then there's a big kung fu fight, and he was like,
nope. If I'm doing that, I'm gonna go back to James Bond. Oh man,
he did a lot of stuff for him. He really got into Rasputin. I don't know about.
Oh, he was great as Rasputin.
Fu Manchu, if that was something he enjoyed doing or something he had to do, I don't know the answer to that.
Fu Manchu might be a little bit not what we want to talk about. But yeah, he did do that.
I love the Fu Manchu movies, but yes, they're not politically correct anymore. And
yeah, they started out with one, and then it ended up in just Franco, right? Didn't he?
Yeah. And there's Christopher Lee acting his heart out in the worst Jess Franco movies ever. Terrible.
But there's some looks like black and white shots from the.
This puzzled me. Looking for graphics, surprisingly, not as much as I would have thought, and a lot of it's in black and white. It's like was the budget so low that even the publicity material had to go out in B&W?
So I found a source with there was like 30 some nice color high definition pictures. They were all face close-ups. None of them had anything like what you have there in the black and whites.
Yeah.
None of the action or fire or
Yeah, it's odd.
But I know I've seen the bottom one with the fire
in
around
color.
the frame, and that's well, I don't know about in color. I doubt if I've seen it in color, but I've seen it in books. That was one of the promotional ones that you would see.
I should have run it through the colorizing AI in Photoshop. And people are like, where'd you find that? Oh, I got my sources.
No. And of course, there's some shots of Peter Cushing with that little teeny gun.
What a great shot that one is! He's got the pistol. Cushing had a reputation for loving props.
Oh, he did. Yes,
yeah, that was even his nickname was props. He would just try to find, what can I do? What can I putter around? I'll hold this Bible, and you're like, yeah, man. Probably the Band-Aid. He probably spent hours figuring out where the Band-Aid goes, and I like it. It's a great shot. I mean, you can read a lot into that. He's got the vulnerability of the Band-Aid, but damn, look at that. Look at the expression on his face. Vampire's gonna die. Yeah. We got the cross. We've got the modern weapon. I mean, it's iconic. That's a great shot.
Just gonna
one little silver bullet and one teeny little gun. Oh my gosh, come on!
I'd show up with a blunderbuss.
I'm going to warn you guys, if I ever discover that you're vampires and I have a gun, when I pull it out, I'm going to shoot it. I'm not going to talk about shooting it or what the bullet's made out.
Also, mine is going to be an assault rifle. It's going to have it's going to have multiple shots. It's like
assault rifle.
Well, that was
a Tommy gun.
Lee goes, you can't hurt me with that gun. But I have a silver bullet. Well, by this time now, somebody's clobbered him from behind.
There's the arrogance of a vampire. It's like, you can't kill me with that. It's like, mofo, there's about 100 things that I could trick this gun up with that would kill you. I got a hollow point bullet with garlic extract in it. It's made of silver. What the heck? I mean, yeah, come on.
We got a hawthorn thorn in the point.
Yeah, I went to a tattoo parlor and I have tattoos of crucifixes over every inch of my body. Worst comes to worst, I strip naked and give you a hug.
Now there's something that would be I would pay.
Never been done as far as I know.
Somebody doing it right now. I'm pretty sure.
That's right.
All right. Well, we got to talk about Joanne here. Joanne Lumley.
And speaking of the new Avengers, she was. Yep. Yeah. She's lovely, but I prefer Stephanie Beacham. Of course.
It's kind of hard not to.
I know.
No offense to Joanne Lumley, but
no.
Well,
but
she's given a lot more to do, I think.
She seems more mature too. Like originally she was supposed to be Cushing's daughter, and he had aged so much since the death of his wife Helen that they said that doesn't work. Let's make it granddaughter. And Beacham looked like she could be his granddaughter. She looks like she could be his daughter.
Oh, I thought it's the other way around, actually.
Really? Oh, well, what do I know?
I thought she looked pretty young, but one of the things I liked is that, I mean, she doesn't do a whole lot, but Cushing has this little monologue when who are the two guys, Murray and Torrance, come to see him, and she brings in the tea, and he tells them how she knows more about his business than he does. That she's very inquisitive. She has a questioning nature, like a good scientist should have. So anyways, he's given her credit for being
right,
an independent, strong person
who delivers the tea when the men show up. Yeah. But no, and that's good. And really, maybe that would have been a plan going forward to make her the next generation of vampire hunter, a Buffy, if we will, before her
that'd
time.
be interesting, yeah.
That would have been kind of cool. But she isn't given a lot to do. But there is one thing: the idea that Dracula would choose her to be his bride is such a dick move. Wow,
Right?
Yeah. It's like he's looking at Van Helsing. It's like, you and your flippin' ancestors have killed me in about 17 different ways, but I got a way that's going to get you. This is going to stick in your craw. No, don't kill him. I want him to live to see this.
I know, that's what it does.
Which, of course, is a classic supervillain mistake, a classic blunder. You got Van Helsing in your clutches. Kill him now, Dracula. No, can't do it.
No.
There is she does have a good scene in the one in the basement with the brides.
Yes.
She does a pretty good job with that of being frantic. Although through the whole thing, I'm like thinking, I want to see the whole layout because I can't believe she can't get away from these people that all have change. They all.
Yeah.
She seems to stand in a place where they can all reach her.
No, that's plot armor. She can't do it.
Right.
But all right, we talk about the cast as a whole, but we haven't said much about we don't even have a picture of the other police officer, because we basically have the one guy there in the center who is he Inspector Murray? So it's Michael Coles.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then we have William Franklin, who plays Torrance, his boss, who is a sharpshooter. I love how they're so good with their guns, man. They go, they put the guns up, they go bang, and they get them right between the eyes as they're motorcycling past them.
As he's running.
Yeah, and that's a great shot above with the two of them.
It is. That is a nice shot of the two of them.
Now, was Michael Coles? Was he in the
first?
He was in 72. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the guy. He was the police guy in that one too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's why he brings him in. He has some specific knowledge and has some, I forget exactly how
right.
the other guy introduces him.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense. That's why he'll bite, if you'll pardon a pun, on the vampirism, and then of course he knows about Van Helsing. He goes, I know somebody, he says.
Who are you gonna call?
Yeah. William Franklin, the guy that plays Torrance, apparently he was one of the. He claims he was one of the 6 finalists for James Bond, and he said that I had the, sly, quip part of it down, where Sean Connery had the physical part of it down, and he said I knew he was going to get it because the Americans were going to go for the physical, and he learned the sly quip aspect of it later on. But after I read about that and watched this, I could see him in some of his scenes and some of the things he said, and the sort of like sly smile he had on his face, that you could see where that might have come from.
So they're blaming us Americans for the Sean Connery James Bond.
He said he was great. Yeah, no, he said he was great. He wasn't being bitter at all. It was just
no.
Weird. It was kind of just a matter of fact analysis of why.
It is interesting when any English actor who doesn't look like Quasimodo, when they interview him, it's like, I interviewed for James Bond, and it's like, so I mean that they were always looking for one.
Well, I've heard that about Richard Johnson too. Talking about they couldn't decide if it was Patrick McNee or Patrick McGowan. Was also on this list, but he's the one that told this story about, and maybe you guys already know this, the white glove story.
Yeah, about Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing with his white glove.
Yeah. I didn't know about that ahead of time, but they said as soon as a scene would cut, this white glove would materialize from nowhere onto one hand, and then pretty soon he'd have a cigarette on there, and people would ask. And he said the bottom line was he just didn't think a vampire killing scientist or whatever part he was playing should have nicotine stained fingers if he was smoking all the time off scene, off camera. So that was his attention to detail. And the guy that edited this movie said the same thing. He would go to the rushes. Nobody else, none of the women were allowed to go to the rushes. But Cushing
Wonder
would.
why.
And he said he'd do, you wouldn't believe the stuff he would do. He'd like watch him and he'd be counting his steps and watching his, these little, they call them little bits of business that he would do with his props and stuff. And did he look natural with it? So he was a very meticulous actor, but everybody talked about what a wonderful person he was. And
it's always, I always feel a little bit bad, and Christopher Lee himself said this when Peter Cushing passed. He said, everybody loved him, and everyone's talking about how much they're going to miss him. They're not going to say that about me, and that's not true. By the time Christopher Lee did finally pass away, he was loved, and I think he came to appreciate that. It's just that the two of them, Cushing was just a naturally warm person, and Christopher Lee was just naturally reserved. I don't think that the two of them loved each other. And I think that speaks well of both of them. And most of the people I've heard talk about Christopher Lee said he was a great guy. But there was something about, listen, I met Peter Cushing at the Famous Monster Convention, met him. I stood in line. I got his autograph. He said some nice things to me, but he was one of those people who has that natural gift. He would have been a hell of a politician because when he spoke to you, you felt like you were the only person, the two of you were the only people in the room, that he greeted you as if you were an old friend, to the point it's like, have we met before? I'm pretty sure we haven't. He had that gift of really making you feel special. And so he'll always be my favorite actor.
And I think the thing with Lee too is that, and I don't quite understand why people would do this, but he, especially with these films, he had no problem bashing them. Saying he didn't want to do them. I mean, why bash something that you're in? Wouldn't you want him to? Anyway, and Cushing never did stuff like that, or at least not to near. You can find, it's unbelievable the number of quotes you can find from Lee about this movie. None of them good.
Yeah. I think Christopher Lee genuinely had greater ambitions in being a Hollywood star, and he was, for a few years. He came here, he did like Airplane 77, he did The Man with the Golden Gun. I mean, these were high profile roles,
right? What can we talk about that? That when it finally came out in the US in 78, that was after some things that you could have been thinking that would have to get a better box office. One of which being Lee was in Man with the Golden Gun shortly after this movie. The other one being Cushing had just been in Star Wars.
Right.
Plus you mentioned what 3 or 4 vampire movies that came out in 78, I think. So there was a lot of stuff going on that you'd think that they still kind of blew it though with their.
No, they fumbled the ball. They definitely did. They fumbled it. Yeah. You're absolutely right. They could have marketed it and people would have went. But it was gone. It came one week and was gone. Yeah. And it was only in I lived in DC area at the time, and it was only in maybe 3 theaters at the time. And it just, one of them just happened to be close to us. It was crazy. But yeah, so we haven't really talked about the vampire basement yet.
The brides.
The brides, and it's more than one brides.
Yeah,
but they're a lot of. Okay.
I mean, they're fun.
This really works for me. This whole, even though they're all chained up, and it just seems weird that like if they when they get tangled up, because obviously they can get all together because they all die in a big pile. But anyway,
that's a great scene where Torrance, the William Franklin character, recognizes the one in the bottom as his I don't know, secretary or stenographer or whoever that's
Because she's the
doing
one
all
that
the stuff for him.
gets kidnapped out of the car when the motorcycle
Right.
races to a
Right.
corner. Yeah.
And he runs over there, and then she's going to bite him, and then Inspector Murray runs over, and that's another thing I saw somewhere. It was like one of the reviews was like vampire hunters that think there's no reason to bring stakes along because there'll always be some wood handy that they can just
always.
And there always is. Even Cushing finds them later on.
So he rips.
I'm looking around the room right now. I'd be screwed. Yeah.
And stabs her right under her breasts are exposed, and stabs her right under the breast with that stake. That's actually a pretty good scene. I mean, a pretty good effects. I thought I could not see the appliance in that shot.
I think that's probably why they didn't allow the women to go to the rushes, because they probably told them all while they're filming it, oh no, we don't actually see your boobs, it's fine, we're camera angles, we've got shadows over it. And then if they saw the rushes, they're like, you lying sons of bitches.
Well, the argument that they made was they didn't want him to see him because he wanted them to be over the top, and he was afraid they'd see it and tone back their performances. But when they actually, I saw an interview with the woman in the bottom, Valerie Van Ost. There was they told me there's going to be a nude scene in there.
Okay. Oh, that's
and to her it wasn't. It was like at the time that was just sort of.
Yeah, I mean it was.
It wasn't an unusual thing, and she didn't.
This was after Vampire Lovers and Lust for a Vampire and all that. Hey, I will say this about Hammer vampires. I like the fangs. They're not too long. They're not stupid looking. Although I don't know, in Vampire Circus they were awfully long.
They're great in Vampire Circus. Come on.
So that's
they wouldn't work. They would not work. When they're too long, it's like you wouldn't be able to. You just shove an apple in their mouth, and that's the end of the whole problem right there.
Well, and that's because they actually used a dentist to take impressions of their teeth and create positives, and then mold a tooth on it, and it would only fit them. The teeth that guy made would only fit that person.
Now, on the other hand, Hammer couldn't do bats to save their lives. There's no bats in this movie, so takes you right out of the scene.
So I got to talk about, just for a minute, I'm not going to get into too much at all, but Richard Vernon played the other guy, Colonel Matthews, the one that gets shot in the head sitting in the car. He was in, and I recognized him immediately. I didn't know his name. I recognized him immediately because he had a bit part in A Hard Day's Night.
Oh, I love that movie.
He was the movie opens and they're on a train, and the lads are in a what do you call it, like compartment, and he comes in and sits down and makes him shut the window. Oh, wait a minute, what if we wanted that window open? I'm a taxpayer. I ride this train regularly, twice a week. Oh, that's where that thing comes.
See the one, the one they kept give us back our ball thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that movie.
It's the only thing I've ever seen him in. But when I worked in retail, we had a TV monitor, and when we opened and closed the store, we always stuck in A Hard Day's Night and played it. To the point of where we were saying the lines back and forth to each other while it was playing. We just all knew him. So when I see that guy, and then there's other ones. There's Norm Rossiter plays a guy named Norm in that, who was in Deadline. I just all of a sudden I went back and looked at that scene and went, holy crap, all these guys are in there. And then Paul's grandfather is played by a guy that was in the 1954 BBC version of 1984.
Oh, nice.
So I just get all.
He was good. He was very clean.
Very clean.
He's very clean. Yes.
Thanks, John.
That's not your grandfather.
Oh man. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up because we have a lot of feedback. Let's just jump straight into it. I believe did Jeff start or Bill start? I can't remember now. Jeff, we'll just go with Jeff. Give us your rundown of the film, your recommendation, and
you got to see it. It's the last Peter Cushing and Lee collaboration for Hammer, right?
Mm-hmm.
The seventh time they're together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times you think they're together in a Hammer film, but they're in an amicus They're like in the
Seventh
skull.
and final
It's not a
one
Hammer
with
film.
Peter Cushing and Dracula, and the fourth one with Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. So they weren't together all those times. But I just Peter Cushing is so much fun to watch, and unfortunately, in these you don't get that much Christopher Lee. I'd love to have seen more Christopher Lee, but you just don't get all that much. I was going to bring this up before, but at one point when the stenographer's, she's chained to the bed or something, and you see smoke coming in under the door.
Mm-hmm.
I thought sure that Lee was just going to appear like Lon Chaney Jr. does in Son of Dracula. He just like the smoke. He's just coming in under the door of smoke and then materializes. But all the smoke comes under the door, and then then the door bangs open and he walks in. It seemed odd. I don't know. Anyway,
a little more violent.
Yeah, you got to watch this. I think this is worth watching. It's not the worst Hammer vampire film, I don't think.
No. I mean, some people might think so, though, but I don't think that.
Well, and I liked it because I have this. To me, it was a little fresher than 72. I just hate movies that try to be hip and mod and they're not. You know,
they tried though. They did try.
And I was loving the sheepskin vest gang. That was just funny.
Oh my gosh.
All right, that's all I got. You got to watch it. Shit, it's a Hammer Dracula movie.
Hammer Dracula movie.
Sorry, I waited that long.
Oh man, Bill Mulligan, what's your say, sir?
Of course, you have to watch it. It's got Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Dracula, Van Helsing. I mean, yeah, it's lower budget. It's not going out with the bang I would have preferred, but it does have some cool ideas. I don't think they get developed enough, but it is interesting having Dracula not just hanging around a church sending out minions and stuff. He's actually a man with a plan. It's a crazy plan, but it's a plan. And I feel like, boy, if this is one of those things where if somebody wanted to bring it back, and it's in the public domain, so I guess we could do it if we wanted to. I could see a mini series or something based on this premise of Dracula as a ludicrously rich guy who's, just tired of immortality. He's watched civilizations rise and fall, and he's done with it. And he's going to take us all out with it. And he's got a personal vendetta with Van Helsing. Yeah, it's got some good stuff here. So definitely worth watching. Come on.
And there's the plague, which one guy gets and just kind of melts in front of us.
Yeah, I don't know. And everyone, apparently it's like everything's okay as long as we set this guy on fire. I'm not really sure that the plan was thought out, because if you give people a plague that as soon as they get it, they start melting, how many people are they really going to infect? If I'm walking down the street and I see my best friend and he's like coming up to give me a hug, but I notice that he's melting, he gets no hug. I run the other direction and he can chase me, but he's not going to be able to do it for long because he's collapsing. He's crumbling away. There's not going to be a plague.
Nope. But
said the science teacher.
Yeah. Said the science teacher. I can love this movie. I picked it. I'm a Hammer nut. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee nut on top of that. I do want to say one thing. I want to confirm that they're in Van Helsing's apartment or house or whatever. He flat. He has a picture of Dracula on the wall. Is that not the same art from the Scars of Dracula poster?
It is.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. For any Hammer completist or fan or Peter Cushing fan, Christopher Lee fan, it's a must watch. Mileage may vary on how well you like it, but it does have this special place, especially for me growing up in the 70s, because I saw shots from it in magazine and Famous Monsters and in the books I would get, but I never got, never could see it until much later. So it kind of had this kind of special mystery to it for me for a long time. And plus the title, by the time you realize what the title was, at least for me, we were encroaching on satanic panic. So as a matter of fact, sometimes there are some cuts that leave that title out. It's just the rites of Dracula. Yeah, but whatever. So I think you need to see it. You need to see it. Do it.
Right.
But, yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Let us know in the comments down below what you think of the Satanic Rites of Dracula, and should Dracula have played? No. Should Christopher Lee play Dracula in the Satanic Rites of Dracula? Not Satanic Rites of Dracula. I am screwing this up, Bill. Have you seen it? In The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. Of course he should have, but let me hear your thoughts. Jeff, do we have some feedback?
We got lots of feedback.
Let's do it.
All righty. I don't know if we should. Well, I'll do the first one as short. This is from episode 177, The Legend of Lizzie Borden.
Oh, wow.
Jeff Chapman says, with a laughing emoji, he's off with the diarrhea. Laugh out loud. I think maybe Doc missed that one.
No, was I not there for Lizzie Borden?
Maybe it was Chad. Somebody missed it, and I think we said he had diarrhea. It was too much information. But
what was wrong with us?
So checking this out sounds like my kind of film. Thanks, DOH.
That might have been me. I don't remember. I thought
Skull,
I was on
Ghost, and OK Sign. Yeah.
OK Sign. There we go.
All these emojis.
And here's a quickie. Episode 185, Death Race 2000 from Jerry Chandler.
A quickie from Jerry Chandler?
Yes,
wow.
It is. Well, that's going to make up for the next one. I love this film. It's so bat guano crazy. It's like a live action Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes movie with the blood and death that would actually result from the Looney Tunes antics.
Yeah,
I like that. That makes sense. All right. Let's see. We have several here on episode 186, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger.
Good. So
I don't know. Doc, you want to do Damien Aceteo?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Damien oh wow, look at all this. Damien says, "Gentlemen, Chad, I listened to the podcast and I'm amazed with the hate for this film." Okay, Doc. So you're telling me you would rather watch Bloodsucking Freaks, Fury of the Wolfman, Dracula versus Frankenstein back to back than watch this movie? Nonsense, I tell you.
He raises a good point.
Okay, I agree with some of the acting choices were bad, but the story was but Ray Harryhausen animation outweighs all that. We don't get many more chances to see the legend in action. I think his work was better used in the next movie, Clash of the Titans, of course. But still, I was mesmerized as a kid watching this movie. Now, a little older, same feelings are there. But now you contend with the story they're trying to tell. Okay, you're right. This movie was shit. But I would much rather watch this over a triple feature screening of the movies I listed earlier. Side note, if you haven't seen, Shudder is now showing The Manitou. Oh, how the Black Saint would be pleased. As always, as always, guys, continued success and much appreciation for all you do for us fans. Damien.
Thank you, Damien.
Thanks, Damien. By the way, I just looked, and Doc was the one missing for Legend of Lizzie.
I wasn't on it. Oh no,
we probably were Doc shaming. When we brought up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you sent me right to the toilet, huh? Okay, I get it.
The next one on Sinbad is from Jerry Chandler. Bill.
Okay. Sinbad depends on how you do it. Sadly, that joke has aged better than this movie. I loved this one as a kid, but Bill and Chad summed it up in their opening comments. It really feels like they rushed this one out without as much care as the previous film. Although I still recommend this one for the younger set. This is a great movie for younger kids who love fantasy. Hopefully it'll still hold the magic for them that it did for me when I was in single digits. Oh, and when you make fun of Patrick Wayne's acting abilities, remember, it's all who you work with. Patrick Wayne may have been bad in this, but in Beyond Atlantis, he was at least the third best actor behind Sid Haig and the Vic Diaz.
Awesome.
Indeed. And I'll do this one. This is Alistair Hughes, a big stop motion animation fan from New Zealand. Dear Trog, Minoton, Kasim, and Melanthius.
Mm.
I should ask who is who, but
I
your
don't wanna know.
TripAdvisor feedback on your experience aboard Sinbad's Hyperborean excursion package was harsh, but probably fair.
Harsh.
Personally, for me, I saw it at exactly the right age, 11, and at exactly the right time, December 24th, 1977. Ooh, Christmas Eve. My best friend and I emerged blinking from the cinema, still young enough to be excited by the prospect of Christmas the following morning and convinced that we'd just seen the greatest film of all time. Adventure in imaginary lands, legendary creatures, and a witch with a seagull's foot? What more could we have asked for? Already a huge Doctor Who fan, it would have completely blown my teeny tween mind if I had actually recognized Patrick Troughton under that beard. As I got slightly older, other attractions briefly presented themselves in Hyperborea, and this film fleetingly became known as Side Boob and the Eye of the Tiger. Of course, that only demonstrates that I was barely any more evolved than poor Trog. And now, as a slightly more mature adult, of course, I could see what every one of your criticisms were absolutely valid. But regardless, to me, Eye of the Tiger still holds wonder and definitely has the best posters of the three Sinbad films. So perhaps that's got to count for something. I miss this era of medium-budget, family-friendly adventure films, which you could happily spend an afternoon in the company of, even on a faraway Christmas Eve. Thank you for yet another entertaining episode. Keep up the legendary work. Alistair Hughes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Al. Appreciate it. Let's see. Here's a couple more short ones. I'll do on Dark Star 187. Mona Lisa says, "Yay, new episode. I have never seen this film, but will certainly check it out. You guys are all so great, and I just love the fun you guys seem to have doing the show." Oh. Now that I hear Chad's thoughts, maybe I won't check it out.
Oh, I love it. Thank you.
That's funny.
All right. So I don't know, Doc, you want to do Gregory Crosby's?
Absolutely. I first saw Dark Star at the tender age of 13 in the distant year of 1979 at a science fiction convention, the same convention where I first saw Ralph Bakski's Wizards, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't revisit for decades for fear it wouldn't hold up to my memories of cracking up throughout the film. However, its $60,000 budget student film vibes aside, I finally saw it again a few years ago on the big screen and was delighted by it all over again. I think ultimately it's more of a Dan O'Bannon film than a Carpenter film, and rather than thinking of it as something to slot into your Carpenter complete list, I would be part of your Dan O'Bannon complete list. A fun, wild talent that should have had a far larger and more successful career. Also, I hate to break it to you, Bill, but poets, alas, do not get a high number of chicks you might think, unless, of course, they are Leonard Cohen.
Well, I was counting rappers too, so.
Oh, were you? Okay.
That skews the curve up a bit.
If our listeners remember, this is he is a published poet and had talked about doing a poem about David Carradine.
Oh, I was racking my brain trying to figure out what stupid thing I said that would bring this on. I say a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think you said
that would make sense.
That, and then I said something about, and if he played a guitar and could sing.
That's right.
I
gave my love a cherry, yeah.
All right. And Jerry Chandler, who really wants to talk about this movie.
He does. Look at all this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Bill, you want to do Jerry?
Oh, okay. Jerry says, "This movie is so damn fun. Even when it's not working quite right, it's still fun in the same way Equinox either version is. It's one of those movies where you can just feel how everyone involved loved the idea of making a film, and polished skills or not, they were giving it everything they had to make it work. When you can pick up that vibe, it goes a long way toward making it watchable, especially compared to technically perfect efforts where it feels like far more experienced people are just going through the motions." Yeah, I agree. Bill mentioned Dan O'Bannon and Alien. My favorite bit of weird trivia about how this film made Alien the film that it was. Insane genius filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky came to America with his agent to find someone to work on the FX for his then planned, insanely expensive, 12-hour-long Dune film. That's only a bit of hyperbole. Jodorowsky figured he would pitch Douglas Trumbull an offer and walk away with him doing the effects work. Didn't go the way he had hoped. Depressed after the meeting, Jodorowsky and his agent saw a line for a film at a little art theater and decided to check out what the fuss was about. He decided halfway through the film that he had to have the guy who worked on this film. He met with Dan O'Bannon, got high with him, and convinced him to join his movie-making crusade. This led to Dan O'Bannon moving overseas and devoting the better part of a year of his life to a Dune project that, at the end, fell apart in no time flat. It also led to Dan O'Bannon having a slight mental emotional breakdown. Alien became his first job after all this. It was O'Bannon who introduced Ridley Scott to the work of two largely unknown Hollywood artists he met on the Dune project, H.R. Giger and Jean Mobius Girauda.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's cool.
Don't think I need to explain the importance of H.R. Giger to the project, even if the studio was initially against using him. Yeah, that is one of those amazing projects. And I know there's a documentary out about the making of this non-existent movie. And it's just insane that at any point anyone thought that was going to happen. But a lot of good did come out of it. So it's crazy. Thanks, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point. I didn't know that. We're done with
that's
it.
No,
Yes,
that's it. That is done with the feedback. All right, we have our next episode picked out, the film that is for the episode. Jeff, this is your pick, and I'm surprised by it, but would you share what film you are unleashing on us?
We will be doing The Werewolf and the Yeti from 1975, also known as La Maldición de la Bestia, also known as Night of the Howling Beast. It's a Paul Naschy film.
It sure is.
Yep.
And it is streaming on Tubi and Plex. And I guarantee you it'll be a better version than either The Fury of the Wolfman and Assignment Terror.
Assignment Terror. I am looking forward to catching this. I haven't seen it since early 80s, and it was a crappy version then.
Yeah.
And this is supposedly a better copy of it, right? Because, you know, these films, unfortunately, didn't really make it to the States with really great copies for us to watch for whatever reason.
Yeah. So I bought the Scream Factory Blu-ray collection.
Ooh, look at you.
Part 1 and 2, and I thought I gotta make this worthwhile in some way.
We've got to review this movie. Yeah.
Well, I almost picked the what's the other one? The Broken Dolls with Blue Eyes.
Interesting.
Which is kind of a
Naschy
version of Giallo.
Okay.
But
I've never seen it.
It didn't grab me, which is actually on Shudder, but that movie did not grab me like this one did.
But this one's got werewolves and yetis. I mean, how bad can it be?
Well,
some of the time, yeah.
We'll find out.
We'll wait. But it's it's Naschy's werewolf all along. So that's looking forward to it. There's a lot of what are the other films on those discs?
I don't have them in front of me right now, but
because he did many.
That blue, I think that blue-eyed one is on there. I'll have it ready when we do the podcast on there.
Yeah,
you just go to Scream Factory and hit it up. They were having a box set sale, so
there we go.
Something to...
I know we do have to start exploring more of his films, and we also have to explore ones that aren't although I'm going to watch all the werewolf films. Some of the ones he did that aren't werewolves,
right?
Because
there's a few of those. But he did
few. There's a lot. There's awesome.
You got to give him credit. I mean, Hammer only did one werewolf movie. That's it.
Right.
For some reason, they did 4 mummy movies, but they only did one werewolf movie. This guy, man, and I have to say, I like his werewolf. His werewolf is really feral.
He's so broad too, right? He's like this wrestler,
big barrel-chested, hard-drinking werewolf.
Yes, yes.
This particular movie is on part 2 of the second box set, and it includes the box set includes Hunchback of the Morgue.
Yes.
The Devil's Possessed, Exorcism or Exorcismo, A Dragonfly for Each Corpse, which I kind of assume is another sort of pseudo giallo. And the first collection, along with Werewolf and the Yeti. The first collection has Vengeance of the Zombies, Horror Rises from the
Tomb. Yes.
Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll. And of course, I had that title wrong. I had it reversed. Night of the Werewolf, and Human Beasts. And there's a couple guys, Rod Barnett and Troy Gwynn, who do a Nashi podcast.
Yes. Yep.
And they do the commentary for all of these movies.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's kind of cool.
Oh, that's probably worth listening to, because you've got people who actually have some passion for the material.
The Nashi cast.
Yep, I used to listen to that. I haven't listened to it in a while. I don't know if it's still happening.
It's still out there. I mean, it's still available. I listened to something on them not too long ago. Alrighty.
I'm looking forward to that. All right, well, that's it for our podcast tonight. Nice, long, happy one. We hope you enjoyed our review. It's all your fault. And we'll be back again in a couple of weeks for Werewolf and the Yeti. I can't wait. Catch it so you can listen to, you'll know what we're talking about when you listen to us. All right, Jeff, Bill, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome.
And Chad, I hope everything's
right.
going better, and you're doing all right, sir. We love you.
Chad.
You.
See you soon, man.
Yes. All right, and I guess with that, we should say good night.
Night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Gruesome Magazine.